So Wisors Incorporated has been founded to provide and facilitate quality 21st century educations online through our digital platform. What is unique about 21st century students and educations? It's an obvious question today. Today's students are born in a digital age. Traditional way of teaching in our school is no longer sufficient the top skills that we need to inculcate students. Digitization has transformed the world. We all have experienced since last year how uncertain the world is. So how do you prepare our child for the world that doesn't yet exist, which is not an easy task for any teachers? So Wisors, uh, one second. So many. Pallavi.
Okay.
Okay. So whenever somebody's on, can you please click on admit button?
Admit. Okay.
Yeah, let me give you admin access. Second. 1 second. I have to give you permission to log in. One second, let me admit everyone. Admit all. One second, Pallavi. Okay. So you have admin access. So we all know, we have experienced since last year how uncertain the world is. So how do we prepare our child for the world that doesn't yet exist, which is not an easy task for any teachers? So Wisors came up with an idea. Our core themes and principles of online education rest on creativity and critical thinking, which is in real-time context. This is the topic that we're going to cover. We provide course curriculum contents, videos, problem-solving Olympiad, designed by some of the highly educated professionals across the globe. Our main objectives are have access to 21st century education anywhere, anytime. Students not only access the contents anytime, anywhere, but can also collaborate, communicate at the same time, learn from the best and brightest anywhere in the world. Apart from that, we provide a digital platform where you can build your own digital assets online. If you do not have a website, we help to have access to that. If you do not have curriculums that you cannot manage online, we provide that facilities as well. So I'm not going to speak about Wisors more than what I already spoken. I'm going to, from here, I'm going to take over, let Dr. Zunali Burwa Penging take over and start the lessons right here. If you have, what we'll do, we will leave some time end of the lesson so that students can ask questions as well, back and forth. And I will let Dr. Zunali Burwa Penging introduce herself, and we'll go from there.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Janali Borwa. Currently, I am at Dallas, Texas. It's 10:38 p.m. I am very excited to talk to you today. And this presentation is going to be an introduction to creativity and critical thinking. Creativity and critical thinking is a very broad area. It takes a whole semester or probably a year to cover one aspect of creativity and critical thinking. So my presentation today is primarily focused on preliminary. We will be basically talking about the importance of creativity in the 21st century. And also, what is creativity and what is critical thinking? and how we can apply it in different areas. I'll just give a few examples. And then, of course, we'll have question answer sessions. If you have any question, you are most welcome to ask me. And you can ask me in both the languages or any language, even in Hindi. I'm fine. Okay, so I am going to share the screen. Just give me a second. I need to get the, you need to allow me to
Yeah, one
share the
second.
screen.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we all talk about creativity and critical thinking, but when it comes to application, that becomes a big problem. It's very easy to kind of just say, well, we need creativity, we need critical thinking. However, to apply this in real life situation, we definitely need some practice, some training, and oftentimes people think that creativity and critical thinking, these type of concepts, these are inborn. People they are born with these skills, and those who are born with these skills, they are gifted, and those who are not, well, they are unfortunate. Well, actually, that's not true, because creativity and critical thinking, these are some aspects which you can actually learn. The teachers can train, the students can learn on their own, or through specific training in different disciplines. So I am going to give you some example on that. Let me start. Well, killing of creative potential. This is a big problem, not only in India, many parts of the world. And this is a big issue in in the educational systems in different parts of the world, even in US in some ways. I'll give you some examples. So what happens is, oftentimes if you go to any, like typically in educational system, what happens is there is a very structured curriculum, and the students have to follow that curriculum. And then when they reach their, say, ninth grade, 10th grade, they have to be now concerned about doing well in their finals, doing well in the 12th exam, doing well in their 10th exam, because from there on they move on to some specialized area, such as either engineering or law or medical, or in any area they're interested in. However, what happens the moment you reach 9th or 10th grade, the focus is to how to do your best in the 12th exam. So what happens is, in that process, we, the teachers and also the parents, the whole educational system, we kind of create a very cookie cutter kind of syllabus that the students have to follow, because they need to get the best score in that exam to get into good college, good university. They have to pass the entrance exam, and the whole idea of creativity and critical thinking, it gets the back seat. So now, if you think about the real life situation, what happens after they get their degree from, say, the best college? You tried hard, your kids tried hard to do well, and they really did well in their schools, and they went into the best college, and they did well in the college. After they graduate from the college, when they get into the real work, the whole world is very different, because there it's not just what they learned in college or in school. It's very, very applied. They have to deal with problems. They have to solve problems on a daily basis, on weekly basis, whenever. They have to be ready all the time. They have to deal with different types of people, diverse environment, teams, and they never learn all this. And they have to think critically. When they have to solve problems, they have to think critically, and then they'll be like, okay, I never learned this in school, and this is what happens. No matter how much you have learned in your engineering degrees, that does not really solve all your problems in your real life situation. So the biggest problem in the educational systems, in many parts of the world, is memorizing, because that is often the fastest way to get grades. And what happens in the process, the teachers, they focus on students like, okay, if you can memorize this, you get the best grade. So you have to memorize everything, memorize the formula of a math problem. Why do you have to memorize the formula of application? So inadequacies in pre-college math and science education are a chronic and a serious threat to our nation's future. So that has been recognized by many parts of the world. And so we have one more problem. What we do is, well, I won't say it's a problem. We always complain that our students, they're spending a lot of time on social media, social networking. What are they doing on the computer? Why are they spending so much time on social networking, on social media? Well, we also have to look at it from their perspective. When we have a curriculum where they only have to learn what we want them to learn, they have a very set curriculum, they have to finish those. And if they have any question in their mind, they cannot ask if that question is out of that curriculum, because that's not a part of their curriculum. There is no one to give them the answer to those questions. So what happens? Obviously, they will go to Google, they'll search information in Google, they will be spending time social networking, because through social network, they network with friends, with other people, they go to those forums, they read, they gain information from there. So because that's the only way for students to have their voice heard. They talk, they speak their voice out. So these are some of the outcomes that we see. But you know why? Because we are not we always thought like we came up with one specific design and we thought that design works forever. However, we are evolving. Everything changes. When everything changes, then we have to adjust to the change. So this is very important for us. How do we adjust to the change? And this is where this kind of critical thinking and creativity, is important. What happens in Indian scenario? Well, Bloomberg reports recently that India would have the world's largest workforce by 2027, comprising of 1 billion people aged between 15 and 64. And the question is, how are they going to manage that huge workforce if there is no training from their school? If there is no training from the college, how will they learn it? Well, school and college, they give very specialized training. It's very bookish, what's there in the book, but what happens to them in the real life situation? And that's a big concern. Then according to a reliable study, 98% of the kids at the time of entering school, they always think differently. They're actually creative. Thinking different means they are creative. They are looking at problem from multiple perspectives. If you ask a little kid something, they will give their own idea. It could be a very unique idea, but they do have a very creative mind. And they also ask a lot of questions when they are little kids. But what happens when they are growing up, we kind of train them not to ask questions because they have something in the book. Read your book. It's there in your book. You have to learn from this book. That is the situation. So what happens is when they grow up at the age of 25, only 22% of them actually think differently. What happens to the rest? they all succumb to the existing environment, and they all only learn how to answer the ready-made questions, how to read that book, what's there in the chapter, rote memorization, all bookish knowledge. And they don't have time to read other things because that is not a part of the whole system. So that kind of uh, motivation is not there. So anyway, the recently announced national educational policy, which was announced in 2020 in India, they have come up with some probably plans to focus on, basically focus on critical thinking, problem solving, innovation, and creativity. And they are trying to kind of, shift from rote learning. Let's see how it works, because they have just started it, and let's be hopeful that we will be able to kind of promote these kind of innovative problem solving thought processes in our children's mind. Let's go back to history a little bit. So what happened back in 1958, Paul Torrance, he took 400 children. Okay, these are little kids, and he wanted to see how creative they are. And what he did, and he just asked them a question: how could you improve this toy to make it better and more fun to play with? That was a very simple question he asked to these little kids. And he found very interesting answer. Because they were kids, they came up with a lot of creative answers, a lot of creative ideas. So what he found was that those who came up with more ideas on that task, they grew up to be entrepreneurs, inventors, college presidents, authors, doctors, software developers. Well, so the idea behind that study is that when they get a chance to ask questions, to think critically, to come up, to develop different perspectives on that problem, that helps them when they grow up. So Jonathan Plucker of Indiana University, what he found that actually, well, we focus a lot on IQ in school level. Well, Jonathan Plucker, what he found was that actually childhood creativity is more related to actual accomplishment than childhood IQ. So childhood creativity is very, very important. So what we do actually in educational system, we always test the IQ of the children. And in applied situation, what is more effective? It's the critical thinking. So what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is actively questioning assumptions. So when we read a book, when we read a theory, what happens? We always think that this is a well-established theory and it is never going to change, but that is not true. No theory is permanent. Theories are refuted over time. New theories build up, new theories challenge the existing theories. Sometimes they replace the existing theories. Sometimes they add on to the existing theories. So questioning assumption is a form of critical thinking. Analyzing the information, synthesizing or evaluating the information to solve the problem. These are some of the key things that we need to focus on. Critical thinking is also an effortful and deliberate cognitive process. So when I say it is effortful and deliberate, so it is not going to happen if you just leave the child on his own and you say, oh, he's born very smart, he's very creative, he's going to do good. That does not happen. It has to be taught. It has to be effortful. The child has to actually apply that kind of creative thinking effortfully until it becomes a habit for that person. Otherwise, after a certain age, what happens is, even though a person may be very creative, but if the person has never used that kind of practice in his day-to-day life or in his workplace, what happens is he gets used to the existing environment, the existing system that is working, and he thinks, well, everybody's following this system, let me follow this system. I'm not going to bring anything new to this. Well, if you want to compete with, you know, today, in today's world, everything is based on competition, you know, survival of the fittest. In that, what happens? You have to keep improving yourself. You have to make yourself the best. And how do you do it? You have to refine yourself, refine your skill, refine your critical thinking. So this is where it is so important. Just getting a degree is not enough. There are different attributes of a critical thinker, but that does not necessarily mean that you have to develop everything overnight, or you have to develop each one of these. But these are some of the skills that are part of critical thinking, you know, asking questions, curiosity. And what happens sometimes, you'll see in school environment, if the student is asking a lot of questions, sometimes the teacher gets irritated, like, well, he's disturbing me, he's asking too many questions. Well, asking question, curiosity is actually, it is helpful. Debates are very helpful. When you hold debates, actually it helps a person to come up with additional ideas to support that person's viewpoint. So that actually enriches his knowledge about that particular topic. You know, distinguishing between the facts. There is a whole lot of list in here, you know. So all these aspects are very, very important. Also, one more thing is, all these things don't happen alone. You also need people. You have dialogues with others. I'll be talking about it in a minute. You know, creativity, you yourself as an individual, maybe you cannot develop it yourself always in every aspect. In some of the aspects, you will need a team, you will need a group where you will discuss something with someone, and then you gain more knowledge by exchanging ideas, by exchanging information. That also enhances your critical thinking. So taken together, these are six broad aspects of critical skills: reasoning, evaluating, problem solving, decision making, analyzing. So these are some of the aspects. Think about it. Do we teach this to our children at any level? Well, we merely do that. I don't think we actually have something like this in our curriculum, unless we actually plan that, okay, let's do some reasoning, I'll give you this. Well, we do have reasonings in some of our homework, but not always. Evaluating, problem solving, these are very important aspects of education. Now, creativity. What is creativity? Well, creativity is basically coming up with new ideas, feasible ideas, elaborating on ideas, and then brainstorming new ways to solve a problem. That is called creativity. So when you think about creativity and critical thinking, sometimes people think that, well, critical thinking is kind of associated with all, science subjects like math, etc. And whereas creativity is more about, creative thinking, for example, say art subjects, coming up with drawing a nice picture, painting, playing guitar, piano, etc. But that is not true. Creativity and critical thinking, they are both applied across all disciplines. Why? The aim of critical thinking is to promote independent thinking, personal autonomy, and reasoned judgment in thoughts and action, the ability to reason well, and the disposition to do so. In real life situation, what happens is, well, we know that now everything is like, mechanical. We have machine. We have machine for everything. Even artificial intelligence is kind of, they have started thinking like human being. Well, we have come up with a lot of technologies, but one thing we have to remember, that it all is driven end of the day by humans. We have to prepare ourselves such that we will be able to utilize the technology well, and also to plan the whole. You think about any kind of service or product in an organization, there has to be a human brain, there has to be a human who has to come up with that idea. And then only when it comes to implementation, and that is the stage where they use different types of things. They will use like machine, and they will use routine work where people will be doing the same thing again and again. But then that doing the same thing again and again is fine, that one section of people will do that, but then there is another big section of population where they will be making the decision making part, you know, marketing, sales, design, development, research. All these need creativity and critical thinking. So just relying on technology is also not enough, but we have to train our mind. That is most important. Okay, so here it is. Critical thinking is for science and math, and creative thinking is for humanity and art. That's what everybody say, and this is not true. As I already said, they both are applied in every aspect. Creative thinking requires divergent and convergent thinking. So when we talk about divergent thinking, typically divergent thinking means you have to switch across different topics. When somebody asked you like, okay, how will you improve your school? Okay, suppose that is your problem. Suppose you have given that problem to your students, that how are you going to improve the schools, come up with a lot of ideas. Okay, so the students, if the student only stick to saying like, okay, we need a good teacher, we need a very, you know, a teacher who who can actually teach well, they just stick to teacher part. If they're not sticking to other areas, that means they are not applying divergent thinking. Divergent thinking means if you talk about teachers, how to improve the teachers, then you also talk about how to improve the other aspects. Like you got to, you know, the system has to kind of, you have to have good buildings, you have to have more, you know, chairs to sit, you have to have technology, you have to have, you know, there are so many different aspects, you know, the students need more support from the, you know, local organizations, and there are so many different topics that you can think of. So that is an example of divergent thinking, when you think of multiple categories that can solve that problem together. And what is convergent thinking? Convergent thinking is actually decision making. Once you come up with a lot of ideas on how to improve your school, say example, now convergent thinking will be like, now you cannot implement everything. Implementation stage is a stage where you can you have to select those things that you can actually implement, considering the available resources or infrastructure, right? And so that is called convergent thinking. So these kind of thinkings, these kind of plannings, you know, these are part of creative thinking. Creativity thus requires a lot of shifting between right and left brain activity. You know, think about 20th century. Like I can say, I can think about my parents. You know, you can think about your parents, your grandparents. During their days, this is what happened. You know, they were in school. The teacher will be delivering the lecture, and it's just the lecture and nothing else. You know, teacher is talking, and the student gets, some of them will fall asleep. Well, you cannot blame them, they get bored. Because if you just keep teaching monotonously, there is no other, you know, additional inputs, what happens is students, the children, they really get bored, because we need lot of visual things, visual imagery. These kind of things are very, very helpful in retaining information, you know. So that is the reason why what happens is retention is lower, and what happens, we end up focusing on memorization. Whatever teacher taught, we'll memorize because we don't have any other information from anywhere else. But what happens in 21st century? 21st century, these kids, they're multitaskers. They do a lot of things at the same time. You cannot expect your child to just sit and study 12 hours a day, because your child may be also interested in swimming. Your child may also be interested in playing football. And if you stop the child from playing football, that means you are actually, kind of not doing any good to your child. You really need to let them have those extracurricular experiences, because that also plays an important role in learning and enriching their knowledge, and also of course in mind and body, you know, an overall development in terms of, you know, physical and psychological aspect. So today's children, they are not only studying, they're doing a lot of things. They're multitaskers. You cannot stop them. They will do everything at the same time, you know. And then again, digitally literate. You cannot tell them like, okay, don't see the phone, don't be on the computer all the time. You cannot simply stop that for because the world has changed. If we want to go back to those days where we were like, oh, we used to read books all the time and we used to listen to our teachers, we did not spend time on this digital media. Well, the world is changing, times are changing. Even the organizations are focusing on digital media. In job, if you are not literate, if you cannot use computer, then it will be difficult for you. So we have to evolve. But with those existing, challenges or opportunities, whatever you call it, how do you groom your child? Okay, so that is the reason why, you know, here, I'm sure it is also happening in India. In US, they are offering mobile, you know, there are mobile friendly homework. There are some softwares that allow these students to, do their homework on their cell phone. They complete the whole work in their cell phone. There are mobile friendly apps that they use, you know, and tablets. And so I'm sure you all are also using tablets. I know students are using that, and things are visual. Students also have become very visual. And actually, when you have both audio and visual kind of inputs, the learning becomes better. And instead of just presenting a learning and experience where someone is teaching, writing on the blackboard. So obviously all these aspects are important and they help. And one more thing is very important. 21st century kids, they have very short attention span. They don't have long attention span. So, we cannot have them focus on what we are saying for like a 1-hour lecture, because they lose interest. So everything has to be quick, and we have to come up with ways how we can teach them, with multiple inputs, so that they don't get bored. So what happens is there are two types of learning: deep learning and then surface learning. Okay, so what happens in deep learning? It takes a very broad view. Okay, it looks for the meaning of the problem, then it focuses on the concepts and arguments to solve the problem. It relates to the knowledge. Okay, now when you say knowledge could be what is already there in the book, and also what is new. Probably it is not there in this book, but some new knowledge has come. Somebody has come up with some new discovery. It is already in the news. We heard it in the news, so incorporate that in the classroom along with whatever is being taught in the class. And then again, of course, relate to applied practice, like whatever you are learning today in class, how is it going to help you in real life situation? So as a teacher and as a student, we can focus on these aspects like, okay, I have learned about this. For example, I am learning about, today I learned about gravity. Why am I learning about gravity? How does it help? Is it going to do anything? So how is it helping mankind? So if you have all these applied kind of mindset, how you apply these knowledge, that really helps learning. There are two things that happen here. You are learning the information in depth, and you are flexible because you are not only sticking to that book, you are gathering information from outside. And you know what, this actually helps you, prepares you better for any kind of exam you take, you know. And also when you are talking about surface learning is typically it relies on memorization. Memorize this formula, memorize this table. I remember as a child, I learned a lot. I was taught like, okay, memorize this whole chapter, memorize this whole very long poem. It's like 3 pages, but you have to memorize it. Think about it. What is going to help you more? Is memorizing part going to help you more, or understanding that without memorizing? Say, leave that memorizing part aside, but you are understanding what it is all about. That is more important, okay? So here, when I teach statistics, I teach research methods. When my students, they have to compute the statistical problems, I do not ask them to memorize the formulas. It's not at all required nowadays. But I do ask them, like I give them the problem and I ask them, how will you apply this in real life situation? If I ask a student, okay, you are learning how to calculate the average or mean, okay? Typically average or mean is calculated by what? You add all the scores and then you divide it by the number of observations or number of participants. It's a very simple measure. Now, if they learn that how to calculate average, and if that's the end of it, then that means that is not going to stick to their brain in the long run. What they have to do is they have to know, where am I going to use that average, okay? If I have to go, say, for example, you are going to buy a land and there are like different shapes and sizes of, land areas there, that is where probably somebody will ask you, what is the average of that particular, what is the average of areas of each of those pieces of land? So this is how you have to think and apply whatever you are learning in real life situation, in your in book. If you don't, then this is what happens. I hope you all remember that crow example. During our days, what happened? We learned that the crow was very smart. He was very thirsty, and so he filled this pitcher with a lot of stones, and then the water level went up and he could drink water. So he was very smart crow. But nowadays that does not happen. You have to be smart. You have to get a straw and take it to drink the water. You don't need to bring one stone at a time and do it. Time changes. So this is the 21st century learners, okay? Students already use technology nowadays, educate them to use it for good, not for evil. Don't stop them from using it. Employers want their workers to use internet tools. So might as well teach your students to use that. Internet is not going to go away. It is going to stay. It is going to grow. So the options, we are left with is, we have to teach what we have right now. What we have to teach the students, we have to teach ourselves, and even the older generations, they have to learn all these technologies nowadays. Otherwise, they are totally stranded at home, because there are people who cannot use WhatsApp because they're pretty old. And then what happens? they are, because they're not using that, they are not in touch with their friends, they are very lonely. But there are other grandfathers, there are a lot of grandfathers and grandmothers who know how to use WhatsApp, and because of that they are in touch with the world. So obviously we have to use this. Creativity can be taught. Okay, this is very important. It can be taught, it can be practiced. Teachers can promote creativity. There are strategies for teaching critical and creative learning. I am just focusing on 4 broad strategies, but there are many different ways, different strategies, which will take many more lectures like this, but I'm just touching on some of the broad areas today. So number 1, fluency. Thinking of and listing many ideas. So fluency means when there is a problem, okay? Suppose you are learning a concept, okay? Now you think of that concept and then try to see what are different applicabilities of that concept, and ask questions like, okay, do you understand every aspect of this? Like what it is, how it works, and in what context it works. So these are different things you have to think about, okay? Flexibility in thinking. You look at that problem from different perspective. Different perspective in the sense, I can give you an example. For example, say, I am asking you how to improve your school. Okay, now if you always say, okay, from your students' perspective, if you come up with different ideas, then you are not flexible. You have to look at the problem from the teacher's perspective as well. For example, you say, I can improve my school if my teacher gets better salary, then my teacher will be more motivated and the teacher will teach me better. Okay, if my teacher gets better equipments, training, if the teacher gets training somewhere, then I will learn better because she will be able to teach me better. So these kind of thinking, multiple perspective on the same problem, that's very important. Originality is something very, very important. See, when you think about originality is something which is a unique idea. Now oftentimes what happens when we are together in a classroom, if we have a very unique idea, sometimes we just feel like, I don't want to share, people will laugh at me because it is too different from what everybody is talking about. My idea is so totally out of place, so people maybe people will laugh at me, I don't want to share this. So these type of evaluation apprehensions are always there among us. So how to eliminate those possibilities like evaluation apprehension, and how to come up with whatever comes to your mind, like in terms of ideas. It may be a very stupid idea, and remember one thing, there is nothing called stupid. Okay, it could be a very simple idea. Just say it, just discuss, participate. It's very, very important. Okay, so, and that is how you come up with a very original idea, when you have a large pool of ideas, and that pool will have many ideas. And then what happens, when one person comes up with one idea, that actually triggers the mind of another person, and related to that topic, another person comes up with another idea, and that is actually cognitive psychological process. When that is the reason why we do a lot of collaborative learning and group studies. It is very important for students, because what happens is then they share and exchange ideas, and when 2 ideas join, they come up with and that leads to another new idea. Very novel concept in organizations today. When they come up with new products, when they develop new products, new services, new ideas, in all these multinational companies everywhere, not only companies, even in educational system, even in hospitals, I can give you a lot of examples. They are all the time, they have to come up with new ways of solving problems. Okay, and for that they brainstorm in group. If you brainstorm alone, you may not always come up with very original ideas. Group brainstorming is the key, where you exchange ideas and come up with original ideas. You elaborate on each other's ideas, add details to that ideas. Okay, and that helps a lot in learning whatever you are learning or whatever concept you're developing in your mind. So why do we need to be innovative in teaching? Okay, well, you know what research shows? Research shows that if you teach, if you just attend a lecture, actually the retention, no percentage was given. This particular study was conducted by National Training Laboratories. This place is in US. And this is what they found. Lecture, they don't know. They did not have much information about what percentage of retention took place among students. Reading, in terms of reading, 20% retention. Demonstration, where the teacher actually demonstrated something, 30%. Class discussion with the teachers, discussion among the students, 50%. Practice, when after learning something you practice, keep doing it, 75%. Teach others, 90%. And this is very important. And that is why the students, when they learn a concept, they should sit together, they should teach each other. Then what happens? Oh, you know what? I didn't understand this part. Did you understand this part? So that the other person will say, oh yeah, I understood this part, but can you teach me the other part? And this is how you learn the most, okay? Teaching other really helps. Tools for enhancing innovation and creativity in teaching. There are many tools. Experiential learning is very important. When we say experiential learning, there could be a lot of things like, you know, you can go to field work, you can get real life examples, you can invite an expert to the classroom, or nowadays Zoom is there, you know, or Google Classroom is there. So you can invite expert from anywhere. They can join, you know, the students in the classroom. You know, these are part of experiential learning. This really helps in, you know, enhancing their imagination about things, because that is like they're bringing information from outside the book, not only just sticking to the book, but from outside the classroom environment. Role play, radio show, demonstration, mind mapping. I'll give you example of mind mapping. I don't have time to give example of all of this, but I have picked some and I'll give you some example. Storytelling, field trips, games, exercises, these are very, very important. This really helps in learning. And all these things are actually enhancing the imagination of the student, and these are part of critical thinking. And this is how the student is actually thinking about that idea more in depth. Okay, so mind map, as I said, I'll give you some examples. Here is an example, mind map. Okay, suppose you are learning about global warming. Okay, what you can do is, after you read that book, whatever is there in that book, okay, read that chapter, read about global warming, and then shut that book and sit down and then think about all the words that came to your mind. Okay, keep writing down all the words. Okay, what is related to global warming, or whatever information you remember, just write. Okay, and then if you do it with your friend or a group of you, sit down and then say, let's learn this. And then what happens is, this whole thing gets broader and broader. You add more and more information. So what happens is, when you kind of think, then when you are thinking, you are not just sticking to this book, because whatever is there in the book you have already written down. Now you are thinking of, okay, what else is related to global warming? Oh, I heard it in the radio the other day. Oh, I saw this in the news. So this is another aspect which is related to global warming. So this is called mind map. You write down different aspects related to that broad topic and then come up with those subtopics. Okay, so these are some of the ways how you can promote, one can actually use, critical thinking. Here, for example, here in this global warming, what happens is, you may think, well, global warming, it is going to actually maybe there should be a lot of trees. And what happens? There is no tree, there is no, if there is not too many trees around, then animals will die. And then you're thinking about animals. Why should we eat animals? Let's not eat meat. So what happens is our mind, the information in our mind, they're always connected in the form of network. And there are nodes and internodes. So when you kind of tap one node, or if you kind of recall one information, what happens is all the related information automatically comes, to your mind. So that information will trigger multiple other informations which are related or relevant to that particular topic. And that is why sitting and thinking and writing down and mapping, it really helps in learning. And it can be applied in different areas. Here is another example. You're talking about, say, climate. Okay, so sit down and think, what is related to climate? Some ideas could be very closely related to climate. Some ideas can be very remotely related to climate. That's fine. Keep jotting down all those ideas and then look at those subcategories. So what happens when you think of those subcategories, broader categories, you are building connections in your brain. And always research shows, there are studies where they say that, there are levels of processing in our brain. Either we can use very superficial level of processing. Sometimes, we can use moderate level of processing, and then at times we can use high level of processing. Now, what is high level of processing? High level of processing is the one where you take time, you connect additional information to the existing information. So what happens when you use high level of processing? You retain more information in your memory. Okay, now when you go back and read the book again or get other sources, read information on that topic, you will learn much more than what is there in your book. And you can in fact surprise your teacher giving additional information on that topic, and your teacher will be surprised, like, wow, this student knows more than what I taught. And this is quite possible nowadays. You have technology, any information about anything you can learn from anywhere. Everything is open source nowadays. Well, I will give you one example. Sometimes telling stories also can be very, very interesting. This is kind of funny. Sometimes, they taught this, Newton's laws. So a cow was walking. Newton stopped the cow. So the cow stopped. So so immediately Newton found his first law. When an object continues to move, it keeps on moving unless it stops. Okay, so Newton found his first law. Then Newton gave a force by kicking the cow. So the cow made a sound. Okay, then Newton made his second law, which is the force. The moment you kick the cow, when you push something, what happens? It made a sound like ma. The cow made a sound like ma, and the cow is moving. So anyway, from that, force equals m and a, which is mass and acceleration. Okay, so this is how, if you use stories, you can remember things. So anyway, so after that, after some time, the cow gave a kick back to Newton. Then he formulated the third law, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So what happens is the students will have a little bit of fun. It is kind of a little funny. At the same time, they will never forget, oh, okay, force equals mass acceleration. So these are some of the small examples you can use, in different ways. Even as a student, you can actually come up with your own little stories, something funny stories, some abbreviations, and this is how you can retain information better. And then, when there is humor associated with any kind of learning, humor, relaxation, and stress-free learning, all these kind of things help you retain information better. If you are very stressed out, suppose you are in a classroom and you are really stressed out because you think the environment is very strict, everybody is so strict, and you really need to focus, you're forced to focus, and you cannot talk. Talk means you cannot ask question. And so what happens is when you are under stress, the retention becomes slow because you will not get too much information. Research shows that if you are relaxed, if you are in a happy, positive mood, you have an open mind. And when you have an open mind, you get more information. Okay. And that is the reason why that kind of very easy classroom environment is so important. And inviting guest lectures, inviting experts in a classroom situation to teach a specific topic is also very important. It's very helpful, when you all are learning a new concept. And then suppose there is this professor in a local college who is an expert in that area. Maybe, we can invite that professor to that class to teach a part of that topic, And what happens? When we have this kind of experience, these are called experiential learning, because when the students have experience of somebody came to the classroom and taught this, then what happens? That is not a monotonous aspect. That is something out of our monotonous classroom learning. So that way what happens is the learning becomes better. Okay, so these are some of the aspects that teacher can also use for learning. So for 21st century learners, the process of constructing and critiquing arguments is very, very important. Arguments, like not arguments as in fight, okay? Suppose there is an information, there in the book, okay? Think about it. If you have some additional questions, like, okay, I don't agree completely on this. What about, say, there's a possibility of A happening or a possibility of B happening. Think about all those different choices that can, help enhance your understanding. So there are two ways of arguments. One is called disputative. So in disputative, what happens is you support your position with evidence. Okay. Now, what is evidence? Suppose you have already read something in another book and you found that whatever is there in this book, this information is not quite correct because you got some other evidence. And this information is maybe old. You have some new information, and that is fine. You can share that. You can say like, okay, I have evidence. This is the new approach. This is the new formula. This is the new theory, and that is quite possible. That can happen, and this actually helps. 21st century learners, they are prone to this, and this is actually in the real life scenario. When you go into your workplace, you will face it all the time. You will be working in groups, you will be developing new products. Suppose you want to be an engineer, you want to come up with a new machinery or some product which needs your engineering ability. That also needs a lot of brainstorming in group. There will be a lot of disputes. There will be another person in your team who will come up with a new, different idea. Okay, you will say my idea is better. You will say my idea is even better. So how do you do that? Of course, these are constructive kind of discussion. They are not fights. And how do you do that? You come up with your evidence saying that, okay, I have learned this, I have seen this, these are the evidences. So this option is better. You come up with a model, like in your science project. Maybe in a science project, all of you can come up with some model, and then make different groups and then discuss, like, okay, how your model is different. What are the different aspects of your model? How is it different from the other group's model? So there are different ways you can do that. Deliberative, compare, contrast, and evaluate alternatives. If you are coming up with, say you have a science exhibition and you have to come up with science projects, Then, you know, you may have different groups, and then compare and talk about it. Like, what are those different concepts? So all these experiences are, this is the scenario of 21st century. And that is why when we learn or when we teach, I am focusing on both the teacher and the learner. When we teach, when we learn, we have to keep this in mind. These kind of disputes will be there. This kind of, you know, constructive criticism is there. We have to train our children right from their school age how to handle constructive criticism. If somebody says that your idea is not good, I have a better idea, I have good evidence, then you have to have an open mind. Teach your child that, yes, accept it. You know, if somebody has a better idea, listen to that idea. Being a good listener is very, very important. Having an open mind is very, very important. These are all very important aspects of critical teaching, critical thinking, you know. And if there is the best idea, yes, go for the best idea. There is no competition, like my idea only has to, you know, survive. So because that is what happens in the real world situation, you know. So these are some of the very important aspects. Transfer of learning is very, very important. You know, what we are learning in classroom. Suppose I'm learning mathematics, I'm learning what is the area of a rectangle in mathematics. Okay, now my teacher taught me, okay, the you know, the formula of the area of rectangle is length multiplied by breadth. Just complete this problem and you are done. Well, that does not help, because what happens is, if you teach that and you are done, and this is what I learned as a child. I learned, well, this is the area of rectangle, this is the formula, and I'm done. I never ever learned that this area of rectangle will be applied when you go, suppose tomorrow you become a big say you are becoming an entrepreneur, say you want to become a farmer, you have got a big piece of land where you are becoming a big, you know, you want to have a tea garden, you are growing tea plants there, you are an entrepreneur. Okay, now you can apply that, like, what is, I have this piece of land, what is the area of that land? Okay, so this will be applied in there. Oh, by the way, the whole concept of mathematics came from agriculture. Just, I don't know if you all know, because originally back in our hunter-gatherer days, you know, when they became a little more advanced, they started growing their own, you know, plants to eat, you know, growing, you know, they started having their own, you know, cultivating things. Slowly they started, you know, to develop this idea of counting, and then areas, acres of land. So slowly, you know, that's how the whole math evolved. Anyway, so across discipline, transfer of information across discipline is very, very important. Across physical context, whatever you are learning in school, how is it going to be applied at home? How is it going to be applied in workplace? You know, so all these aspects, think about this. Also, if you have some plan, like, okay, I want to be this in future, I want to, when I grow up, I want to study this. Okay, then keep that focus in mind, and whatever you are learning today, think about it. So, you know, eventually my goal is, I want to be a lawyer. Okay, if I want to be a lawyer, how will this be applied in a law area? How am I going to learn, you know? So think about it. So this is very, very important, you know, that you know, when you see there is a relevance to your future career, then you will learn things better, because that will give you motivation. I'm learning this, this is going to equip me better for my future career. Okay, across social context, you know, whatever you are learning today, you are learning alone. Will it be applicable in big groups? So all these things are important. Focus on what is future likely to hold for you. Okay, so that is also important for the teacher. When a teacher is teaching the students, they also have to think like these are 21st century students, and maybe in another 20 years, if I don't if I stop them from using technology, if I stop them from using internet, this is not going to help, because that is the future. They will need it. I might as well change myself, and I learn it, and I train the students this, so that I can prepare them to be in a better place, because the world is very, very competitive nowadays, and this competition is going to be more and more. As I said in the very beginning of this presentation, that how in India there will be a huge workforce by the in next few years. So there'll obviously be a lot of competition. If there is a lot of competition in the workplace, you have to prepare your kid in applied terms, not just what is there in the book. So technology is very important as a tutor for creative thinking. There are digital technologies which can be seen as tools. There are a lot of digital technologies on the internet. You Google it, you will find, and then, Wisors is doing, a good job about teaching. They have come up with this new concept, which is also going to be helpful, after school. You can have your own science club. I don't know, maybe some of you have it. Here in US, what happens is they have different clubs. They make clubs like history club, writing club, then mathematics club, science club. So if a student is interested in a specific area, so what they do is, the teachers don't create those clubs. It's the students who do it. So students, they get together with 3-4 kids who are of same, they have the same interest, same area of interest. They say, okay, let's come up with that club. So the teachers, they kind of support them. Teacher support means not financial support. There is no financial support or nothing like that. It's like help them. Okay, you have come up with this club. What they do is, this club, they gather information on their topic. They will present, they will come up with, okay, we are going to have a presentation. Please, everyone come and attend our presentation. We are going to present a talk on, suppose this is a club on, say, management, business and management. So they will come up with a topic, and they will make the presentation, and then they will invite all the other students, the teachers come, and then they attend it one evening. And what happens, there are multiple clubs like that. Math club will have a math hackathon, they will have, there are programmings. There are some students, they may be interested in programming, and they make a club, programming club. And what happens there? When they make a club, they talk about those topics, and they gain a lot of information, because when you exchange information, your knowledge multiplies. And these clubs are very helpful. If you don't have clubs, I'm sure you have, or you may not have, come up with those junior clubs on different topics. This is going to be very, very rewarding. And this model has worked in our country. I'm sure it is going to work there as well. Collaborative working is very, very important. Well, not only in classroom, also outside the classroom, in the form of clubs, and then there are different scopes of this collaborative learning, collaborative creativity. What do you do when you are in groups? You brainstorm. You can brainstorm in different ways. You can brainstorm verbally, face to face. You can brainstorm even by texting. You can create your little WhatsApp group. Here, our students, like my daughter, she's in 9th grade, and they have like a little group, and she's in astronomy club because she likes astronomy. She created that astronomy. So it is up to the student. See, she created, means she asked people like, hey, are you interested in astronomy? So she made a little poster, and then she created that poster. She went to the school one day and she was standing in one place with that poster. And this is quite common in US, you know, and then say, if anybody is interested in this astronomy club, come join. We will come up with this club. So what they do, they create groups, and then those little groups, they help because they gather information, they discuss, they brainstorm electronically, they make little they have different groups that they make, you know, Snapchats or WhatsApp group, and then they share ideas, and then they come up with decisions. They become very independent thinker that way. You know why? Because that does not have a teacher, that club does not have a teacher. They decide, okay, this year we will come up with a exhibition or some sort of a presentation. Okay, this is the topic. Let us invite everyone, the teachers and the students. They'll do that. Oh, so all these kind of discussions, they really help. They take each other's perspective, and all these are just, you know, different aspect of critical thinking. Okay, there are many reasons to collaborate, generate ideas, build alignment, build network. You know what, when you go into real life situation, whether you become a doctor or you become a teacher or you become a lawyer or you become a guitarist or pianist, anybody, your networking is very, very important. You have to build network, you have to make friends, because your network helps you in, you know, shaping your career. So all these things, if we, the teacher, do not tell our kids that learn networking, then they will not learn all this. These are very, very important part of critical thinking skill. And you cannot achieve everything in world by yourself. You need people with you. You need your friends. You need support. You need, of course, technology is there. Technology is a big support. And then your friends. And all this information, gather inputs. Okay, so these are some of the, as I always say, you know, two heads are always better than one, as this double helix, Watson and Crick, you know, this, if you see this DNA, the double helix, actually each strand was discovered by one person. It's not like one strand was discovered by one and the other one is discovered by other person. And they got together, and this is how we came up with this. Walt Disney, you see all those Disney movies, they don't come up, it is not like one person or something, it's always a lot of ideas together, you know, they collaborate together and they come up with those ideas, you know. So this is why collaboration is very, very important. And this brings me to the end of this presentation. Now, if you have any question or queries, you can ask me. And I have stopped sharing.
Anyone has any question? No questions?
I think I went beyond time. I guess I took a little extra
That's
time.
okay.
So,
yeah, it was an excellent presentation. So the whole point of this virtual relation is to collaborate, not only within yourself, with everyone. Collaboration, communication skill is very important for any students to succeed in life. So I advise everyone to come up, at least ask something. That's going to help you build up your confidence. That's one of the main, objectives that we have been trying to inculcate to students, right? We as Wisors have been taking lessons for many months since last year. We encourage students. We want to bring awareness so that at least students build confidence, because what you're learning at schools today, that's not enough to compete in the marketplace that we have. The jobs that we have today in the market, demands 21st century skills. So getting 100 out of 100 doesn't going to fulfill, or it's not going to prepare you to compete with the jobs that we have in the market. That's why creativity and critical thinking is very important for any students. And we just wanted to cover, this was an introductory lessons. We have many very innovative course curriculums. We have recently tied up with one of the US company who has been coaching, mentoring students on critical thinking and creativity for last 50 years. So we'll bring those materials to you guys, and we need your feedback. If you feel that this was really valuable and important, please send us your feedback, and we are there anytime, just a message away from you. Reach out to us if you need any help, anything, be happy to hear from you. Mr. Sharma, you want to say something about anything? Mr. Hiranya Kumar Sharma? Okay, so if you do not have any other questions, then probably this is the time to end the call. Already exceeded more than 1 hour. কিবা question আছে নেকি কাৰোবাৰ? নাই?
Okay, thank
Okay.
you everyone for
Yeah.
your time and
Yeah.
for attending this.
Yeah.
I enjoyed talking to you all.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, miss. Thank you, sir.